Welcome to the AVAIL podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra, and today we're sitting down with James Sang Lee. James is a former four-time ISKA martial arts world champion and CEO of Canon Entertainment Group. And in this episode, we'll be discussing many of his experiences in the movie industry, the martial arts industry, and how God can use you right where you are. Lean in, leaders, and let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AVAIL podcast, where we dig deep and talk about this art we call leadership. As always, I'm your host, Virgil Sierra, lead pastor of Vertical Church, aka Iglesia Vertical in South Florida, where we are one church, two languages. I'm your host, where I get the privilege of meeting amazing people. And today, this is kind of an AVAIL interview that I've never had before. I'm sitting down with the one and the only James Sang Lee. James, it is so good to have you here on the AVAIL podcast. How you feeling?
Virgil, thanks for having me. Super excited to be on the AVAIL podcast. All glory to God. Yeah.
It's going to be a fun conversation, James, because I think our audience is going to lean in a little bit as we get to know you a little bit, especially because you have some interesting strengths as far as the experience and the know-how that you have in certain industries that are really interesting, very interesting as far as I'm concerned. And you also have a major kind of martial arts background. I think it's going to be fun to get into all this. Before we get into the conversation of kind of, what you do and all of that, I'd love for our AVAIL audience to get to know you a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about who is James Sang Lee.
Sure. Well, like I said, glad to be on the AVAIL podcast. My name is James Lee. Most people know me by James Sang Lee. I'm former ISKA world champion. I had the great privilege that God would put me in the world final 7 times. I won 4 in a row on ESPN. I've studied 5 different styles of martial arts, from Kung Fu, Karate, Taekwondo, Jiu-Jitsu, and Kobujitsu weapons. I got really well known for the weapons part of the industry, in particular with the nunchucks. You might remember Michelangelo or Bruce Lee. And so that's how I got discovered to be in films. And of course, my weapons background was also in the security industry as well.
I love that. Here at AVAIL, we just love talking to people who are making an impact wherever God has them, who are able to influence and really lead the way. I think that's something you've done. I want to kick things off in this conversation, just talking a little bit about how you got into martial arts. Is this a passion that's always been in your life? Was there a moment that sparked everything? Talk to us a little bit about that martial arts journey.
So my family's from Hong Kong, China, and I grew up, though, in the Midwest in Wisconsin. Most of my family lives in Toronto, Canada. But you got to understand something for a second. To grow up in Madison, Wisconsin, a particular suburb, there's not a lot of Chinese people there. So I think there's a portion of it like I might need some martial arts for self-defense. But I saw in this time frame a Bruce Lee movie. And, when you're young, you got your favorite sports team. And here I was surrounded by blonde hair, blue eye, a heavily Norwegian community. I'm thinking, who's my hero? And when I saw Bruce Lee, I was like, what? I want to do that. Like, I want to do Kung Fu. So that's kind of how it started.
I love that. So it was kind of early on. You kind of got into it. You got excited about it. And what about it? What about martial arts, I guess, captures you? What's powerful about it for you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is I really identified that Bruce Lee was Chinese and my family was from Hong Kong. And so there was a cultural aspect. Mm-hmm. I love the physical fitness, just working out, throwing kicks, being limber and fast. I really enjoyed that physical human body movement. And I think also, too, I love to compete, the idea of winning. And especially that time, there's all these huge martial art trophies and championship belts. And then Karate Kid came out. I was like, this is the best.
Okay, I'm picturing it now. James Sang Lee, born and kind of coming up in Madison, Wisconsin. You see a movie with Bruce Lee. It captures your attention because of all the things we've mentioned, right? And then you kind of start leaning into it a bit. Did you start classes or competitions? Was that something that started kind of at a young age with you?
Absolutely. Well, and here's the thing. So my father, who's passed now, was good friends with a man named Sankey Paik. Paik was known as one of about 5 people that brought Taekwondo into the Olympic Games. So my father and Sankey Paik, Alexander Lee and Sankey Paik, were in the University of Wisconsin together in zoology, going towards their
Wow.
PhDs. So that's sort of the connection behind the scenes. But I'll also say this as for listeners out there, this time, you're talking the 1970s. I was in grade school. I was about third, fourth grade, kind of around that time frame. I witnessed, unfortunately, and I'm going to take a turn here for a second, my father, who was beaten up by a police officer in the 1970s. And so it became this place where I was like, wow, I just was very devastated. And by the way, this is not a cut on law enforcement. I know they have a tough job and we need law and order. And I work with many law enforcement today with what I do. But this was an unfortunate incident in the 1970s. I fell to my knees. I was crying. And all of a sudden, Virg, I just kind of went, spit. And I was like, that will never happen again. Not to myself, my family, anything I'm ever a part of. I was sort of in this, like, I'm going to be a protector of other people as well. So that became very pivotal of, like, as it really a passionate pursuit about doing martial arts.
That's interesting. And I can imagine, I can see how you could look back on that and say that really was kind of an important moment with a before and an after. Now, fast forward a little bit to these times. You're the CEO of Canon Entertainment Group. Talk to us a little bit about Canon. What do you do? What are the different branches of what you do in Canon?
Absolutely. Well, Canon comes from my love of Hong Kong. My grandmother lived on Fortress Hill in Fortress Hill, Hong Kong. The Chinese calligraphy of Fortress Hill is a cannon on top of a hill that can never be beaten. So the Canon, as in Canon Entertainment, became part of that. Whatever we do, it doesn't matter, film, martial arts, business, make money. We wanted to bring glory to God and make sure that we do it at a place of excellence and a place that would honor God in all that we do. So Canon became part of this. We would help other people, martial artists, filmmakers, fight choreographers, teach everything from lightsabers all the way to stunts. And so that was part of the whole live event and filmmaking that was Canon. It came from that Fortress Hill, a cannon on top of a hill that can never be beaten.
Whew. I like that. I like the visual of that. So in Canon, for example, I imagine, like you said, it ranges from fight choreography, understanding how to use and I guess even weapons. Is this for movies specifically, like for cinema? Is it also connected to like real life, as far as defense or anything like that?
Absolutely. Well, let me start with this, because anytime you study martial art weaponry as extensively as I have, so it started with nunchucks. I saw Bruce Lee, but my expertise is weapons. So nunchucks, tonfa, staffs, swords, knives, sticks, even firearms. And so when you talk about what does Canon do is providing the fight choreography and the weapons consultation, we are able to do it authentically for real because we can handle all this gear. And for example, we would do it for film. We would do it for stage. We would do it for fight scenes, for stunts. We'd teach actors. And in fact, the last film that I did with Gerard Butler, they brought me in as one of the 4 on the Green Berets for the safety team to be the actual characters in the movie, because I shoot the 4.5-foot long Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle. So it's not just for fake. We are authentically able to use this gear for real.
That's cool. Now, I think there's some audience members right now asking the question, I wonder if James has been in any movies. What films have you been involved with, and to what capacity?
Sure. So in filmmaking, I got discovered by Hulk Hogan in the early 90s. And Hulk saw me doing double nunchucks in a live stage performance. He was walking through this concert and nightclub facility with Michael Burke and Doug Schwartz from TV show Baywatch. And they saw me, and Hulk walked right up to me. He's like, James, you got to be in my movie. And so that kind of became the sort of initial calling of performing it, acting in it, doing stunts, and then teaching others how to do it. So I've done everything from Lethal Weapon 4 to I fought Wesley Snipes in Blade. In Lethal Weapon series, I was with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover and Joe Pesci and Jet Li. All the way fast forward, as I mentioned, to the movie Plane, where I play the Green Beret sniper Willis in the Lionsgate action thriller with Gerard Butler. So I've done a lot of action films over the years, and some people recognize me, but more usually as a villain, or as like they call it the heavy. And so I'm usually a good bad guy.
I like that. From all those experiences that you've had throughout the years, are there any standouts, any standout things that you remember or experiences you remember being on set or even on the training side of things?
Well, I got two that come to mind for me. When I was with Wesley Snipes in Blade, many people call that Marvel #1. Like now we've got all these Marvel films now, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people consider the original Blade as Marvel #1. And so I had the great privilege to fight Wesley Snipes in Blade. And I think we all knew when we were on set, like, this is something very unique, very special that's happening. And we didn't know then, but as you look back, it was the origins, for Marvel that we know today. I would say, though, Plane was a really interesting thing that happened. So I've got a little interesting gap, Verge, in my movie career. So I spent a lot of time in the what's called executive protection business. So that's the high-end security industry. So I've been to Sri Lanka, Egypt, Ukraine. I've been all the way to the red zone of Ukraine during the war, all the way to Brazil during the FIFA World Cup and the Olympic Games. So people have utilized my understanding of protection for people's real protection, right? All the way from armored vehicles to corporate security to large world sporting events. Anyways, so I've had a period of time that I've been in security heavily. And so I was out of film, like mainstream. Well, sure enough, I prayed to God one day. I was watching this security event. It was going off the rails a little bit. And I literally said, Lord, I go, this doesn't seem very godly. You want me doing this still? And I said, if you don't want me to do this anymore and I can leave, send me a movie. Now, you have to understand, after I told you all those films that I was in, I had this gap, though, of years. Probably 2 decades from a film standpoint and a decade from a TV standpoint. Sure. So I don't have an agent, no pictures, none of that, right? Well, I say this prayer, Lord, send me a movie. Not like I was trying to be in the movies, but it's more like the craziest thing I could think of in the moment. Sure enough, 3 days later, Lionsgate calls and says, hey, they want you to be one of 4 guys in the movie Plane with Gerard Butler. They want you to be a Green Beret that goes and saves those guys. And so I'm like, okay, we doing this again? And Jenny and I, my wife, were like, I think we're making a movie again. So I get to set day 1, and Lionsgate was like, hey, guys, we want you to be together like you've been together for 25 years. You got to eat together, work out together, hang out together. So on that 40-foot screen, you guys look like you've been Green Berets together for years. So we're like, hey, let's go out to eat. Well, one guy gets called back to set. One guy has a family emergency. And I'm with one of the Navy SEALs, and I said, Lord, give me a unique question to ask him. And I was like, okay, there we go. And the question that God gave me was, what brings a Navy SEAL to the movie business? And that Navy SEAL looked across at me and he says, well, James, I wanted to be a preacher.
Wow.
And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, if I wasn't on this movie set, he said, I'd be telling people about God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit and teaching them about the Bible. Wow. And I was like, what? And so then he looks right at me and goes, James, we are both here on this set at this point in time to be salt and light. So no matter where we are, he says, use it for God's glory. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. So I give you that as a little like, wherever we are, God's ready to use us.
I love that example. And it's so true. I think, James, as we have a lot of leaders leaning in, pastors, ministry leaders, marketplace leaders, I think if anything, that's something that we as leaders need to be aware of, that no matter where we are called to make a difference. Like we can make a difference. I imagine like you asked yourself, there's been times along your journey where you're like, Lord, do you want me here? Do you have me here for a reason? And I can imagine, moments like these being moments of just feeling like, wow, God, I could sense you're here. I could sense you're with me. Those moments,
Absolutely.
those moments feel great. Another curiosity, just kind of from this side of things, you've obviously been an actor in movies where you're portraying. On the side of training, though, have you trained opportunities to train actors or people who kind of are on film or on stage?
Yeah, I did a really cool movie about a year ago now called the Kahana film, which is a movie about legendary stunt coordinator Kim Kahana Sr. He just passed actually 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And this guy, 94 years old, get this, Verge, 94 years old. He was taught by Yakima Canutt, John Wayne's stunt double. Wow. So a lot of listeners might know who that is. Some might not. But this is the cowboy era of the film industry. They give credit to Yakima Canutt for coming up with the phrase stunt that we use today.
Wow.
Okay. So anyways, this guy, all the way back to Yakima Canutt, John Wayne, guy was in the Korean War, buried twice alive, 3 plane crashes, survivor of only one, Charles Bronson stunt double in all the 1970s movies, and the list goes on, okay? So I got to teach all of the actors for the Kahana documentary film that was just coming out. I think it's on Amazon Prime this week, actually. Anyways, so I taught all that crew how to do the 1943 fight scene, 1945 fight scene depicting him in that period of time of when he was attacked in real life. So yes, I've taught actors, stuntmen, and more.
That's so cool. That's so cool. As we talk about leaders, James, I wonder what comes to your mind, right? In what ways do you think, or do you see your work and your background fitting into the sphere of leadership?
Yeah, I love this question. I recently spoke for Student Leadership University in San Antonio, Texas, and in Orlando, Florida. That group spends a great deal of time equipping mainly high school and college age students to equip them to be prepared in wherever the spheres of life that God takes them in career. As obviously, they're young people getting ready for career. One of the things that I mentioned in this last speaking session was the thought about in the time of Daniel, right? You think about Daniel, and a lot of times we can gloss this over in the Bible. They're like, oh man, Daniel's had all this success and saved in the lion's den, and he was at the king's footsteps and all this stuff. But we forget he was essentially a slave.
Yeah.
Right? His whole country was taken over. But the reason I bring up this sort of general context about Daniel and then obviously Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is that they were so good at what they did from a career standpoint, right? They were so skilled, right, that they were at the king's court in another culture, another country, as slaves at the right hand of that king. But what I bring this up, though, is I think there's a time coming where Christians will need to be so skilled at what they do that they're indispensable, regardless of politics, economics, religion, and so on, because there might be a time coming soon that we'll be in other kings' courts.
Yeah, that's good. It says in the book of Daniel that in every area, the king found Daniel and his comrades to be above and beyond the rest, and there's something significant there, right? And I don't think it's about us needing or wanting the glory. I think it's about us standing out and shining for the Lord. And you
Absolutely.
mentioned it as well. When that Navy SEAL told you, "I think we're here to be salt and light." How does it feel to be in that moment? Like how does it feel to be in a moment or even in an environment where you might feel like you're the minority, so to speak? You might, like, everybody else might not be
Yeah.
believers in Christ. Um, what from your experience, what is that like, and what helps you do what you're called to do?
Absolutely. Well, I'll use that one from plane for a second. So when I was with that Navy SEAL in that moment, I realized on day one, God was setting the stage right out of the gate just to go, I'm here. I'm with you. You may feel like the minority. You may be the lowest on the ladder.
Mm.
You may feel like you don't belong. But God's like, I'm the one who has put you here, not yourself.
Yeah.
And I am going to do some great things.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. A a couple thoughts as I'm hearing you kind of share a little bit about your experience, because we talk about it in a few minutes here, but we're talking about many years of journey on this path that God has had you on. As you look back now, you know James Sang Lee in 2024, right? When the year that we're recording this, if you could go back and have a coffee, or a meal with the younger James Sang Lee, you know, young adult, maybe kind of finishing grade school years and kind of entering that young adult life. And if you could sit down with your younger self for an hour, and you had an hour, and you wanted to just touch on or hit on a few pieces of advice for life, for what's coming ahead, what would you share
Yeah.
with yourself?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, before I answer that, I'm going to start with this. The World Championship years are a testament to this, what I'm going to answer. So, my mainstream years, I started in martial arts in the 70s, was big in the 80s, and competed and won in the 90s. I had a large gap in my martial art career, but there was always one championship that eluded my career. It was called the ISKA World Championship. In fact, the belts behind me are testament to what God can do when we're listening. So the ISK World Championship is 20,000 people, 3-day tournament, 65 plus countries, all whittled down to see who will be number one in the world on ESPN. And I always felt like, wow, this one championship has eluded my career all these years. I'm going to finish out my career. I'm going to go one more time. So I had a 10-year gap from the last time I competed. Long story short, I wanted to take three young guys with me
Mm-hmm.
that were in our local church. They grew up in the youth group. They were college guys at this time. And I said, they were really into movie making, into fight scenes. And I said, you know what, guys, we need some accountability on this. I said, let's spend time together. Let's study God's word. Let's go for the world title. And as we go, this will give you your chance maybe even to be in the movies. Well, we go for it. And we faced 43 teams in the first year of this, okay? And we lost to Trinidad by 1/100th of a point on ESPN on worldwide television. Long story short, I was actually at the point of my career like, I'm good. I made it one more time to the world final. I'm good to go. And my teammate, who's not competitive, he says, let's go one more time. I was like, okay, you can get the guys to do it. I'll do it. Now, you have to understand something. This is 3 practices a day, 7 meals a day, right?
Yep.
And then in my specialty with weapons, is it called gun disarms? I did 200 of those moves every day before practice 3 times a day. So it's a very extensive journey to go towards a world title.
Right.
Now, we end up, of course, winning the world championship title. And then we went on to win not only 1, but 4 in a row.
Wow.
Now, I say that to set the stage that I was like, I think we're done. But back to your question is never give up. And I would say it specifically in these terms: be patient and hold fast. I do mean this too. Hold fast. Here I was outside of my prime
Mhm.
as a physical athlete,
Mhm.
right? 20 years since I was in the world championship rounds, 20 years. And we would win not just one, but 4 in a row. Only God can do that. And I say this is that when it's his time, his glory, how his purposes of how he wants to be known, he's going to do it. He is sovereign over all things. And I would tell the younger James Lee, that desire in your heart, it's there for a reason. It's because God put it there.
Mhm.
And we have to trust in him, in his sovereignty, in his timing, that he's going to make himself known. And when we're available and we say yes, he's going to use us. So I would say to my younger James Lee, hold
That's
fast.
good. That's good. James, anywhere along the journey, did you ever feel like giving up? Did you ever feel like did you ever feel like I don't know if I could keep doing this? And I know that's part of the advice, right? Don't give up, hold fast. But did you ever feel like because one thing is I think I'm going to try something else, but did you ever feel like, man, I don't know if there's any hope for what I'm trying to do?
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this. So that championship, when we lost to Trinidad, I said to myself, my time is my time. All athletes know we have a certain shelf
Sure.
life. And when my friend Adam said we should go for it again, I thought he was crazy because I'm like, we're talking about another year. And we were practicing, and one day I was just so tired. As I mentioned, we practiced so many times a day, eating all these meals, and I actually fell to my knees, and I was like, Lord, I why would you even send me on this journey one more time to be yet again disappointed? And sure enough, I was crying and having this conversation with God because I was like, I was ready to give up. In fact, I think I did give up in the moment. And sure enough, the phone rings and my pastor calls me out of the blue.
Wow.
And he says, James, what are you doing right now? And you people all know this. You want people to see you this way. And I was like, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm fine. And he's like, no, really, how you doing? I go, no, I'm fine. What are you calling about? And he says, I literally called you right now to tell you we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And here's the funny thing. He hung up. He didn't even elaborate on it. He just said, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Hung up, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's the answer. And then,
Wow.
but I wanted to give up. And obviously the Lord his spirit sent me the strength and a reminder in his word.
That's so cool. Yeah. That's so cool. Do you have any projects coming up? Is there anything on the horizon as far as maybe coming out soon or that you're going to be working on soon?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is I'm on a show that I'm attempting to try called Test Drive Live. And it's an unboxing show. And the reason where I'm attempting, I say, is I am so interested in this era of communication and gaming and all of these social media platforms of how people are gathering, communicating, sharing ideas, and talking through various social media platforms and video games. And so I've been very interested in this type of platform, in particular, like sort of this YouTube unboxing type of shows. And so sure enough, I got approached by Test Drive Live. I think it launches September 15th. So you'll start seeing me on this Test Drive Live show. I've filmed 18 episodes for them. I think it will be Samsung as well as Tubi, I think, as well. But anyway, that's the next project. And of course, I'm very interested in gaming, how video games is a part of our culture. I myself was not a gamer. I got really kind of interested in it because of my son.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm very interested in some projects called Powder Keg Games and One Xeno Games. So check that out coming up with some video game projects.
That's really cool. If people are leaning in and they want to know more about Canon Entertainment Group, or even if they want to connect with you, online or social media, what are the best places to go?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me online is on Instagram at James Sang Lee. So that's James Sang Lee. That's a great way. And also on YouTube. I started using YouTube a little bit more so they can get a hold of me on YouTube at James Sang Lee on YouTube.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to mention real quick, I do this every episode because we're on the AVAIL podcast. The Avail Journal, everybody, if you're leading in right now and you are not yet subscribed, you can subscribe for our free trial subscription of the Avail Journal. It's on us. We want you to try it out. Go to availjournal.com, availjournal.com. I don't know about you, James, but I know that having resources in my hands of people that have maybe are farther down the road, that have some input, that have some content, it always helps me along the journey. I imagine on your journey, you've leaned into resources like that as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I just got your guys' book from Unorthodox with
Yes.
Martin Van Tilborn. You got to check it out. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, very good, very good. I love this. I love James. I love this conversation. It's definitely a bit unique for our Avail atmosphere and environment. But what I love about it is specifically the reality and the fact that God can use anybody, anywhere they're at. Can you just maybe touch on a few last thoughts about that?
Yeah, I love that question because God has used me in multiple industries. I have been in the martial art industry at a very high level. I've been in the movie industry at a high level next to Mel Gibson and very famous actors, all the way to the high-end security industry. I've been across the table from presidents of countries, even bad guys in the world as well. And so I've found myself that God has positioned me in these various places in time in my career. And I would say this is that whatever you do, whether you eat, drink, sleep, whatever the career, whatever the location or occupation, be available for what God wants to use you for, because he wants to use you as part of salt and light for his purposes and his glory. I've been very fortunate that I've been in a lot of these different arenas, but I recognize that God has placed me there for his purposes and for his people so that they know him.
I love that. I love that. I'm hoping, James, that there might be a book in the future. There might be some things coming out of you. I don't know. I don't know if I'm onto something there, but could it be in the future there might be some resources coming out from James Sang Lee?
Absolutely. In fact, we're beginning to work on that book now. Obviously, I've been speaking more for Student Leadership University, connecting more with AVAIL and Martin Van Tilborn, and excited about sharing the various stories of how God's taken me on these crazy adventures for his purposes. So I'm excited about this next book. Don't have a name or title for it yet, but this book is not too far away.
I'm sure it'll come. I'm sure it'll come. What's a final thought you want to leave, a final encouragement maybe you want to leave for everybody as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I would say is trust in him. Trust in the sovereignty of God. Encourage people to always be in the Word. Read Daniel. One of my favorite verses, though, that I always share with people is from Philippians. And this is a paraphrase, but I once thought these things were so important, but now I consider them worthless because of what Jesus Christ has done.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage people, just honor God with whatever you have, wherever you're at, because he wants to use you and we get to be a part of what he's doing.
That's a good word. Thank you, James. On behalf of our AVAIL team, our founders, Dr. Sam Chand and Martijn van Tilborg, our AVAIL team that is working week in, week out on everything that we do here at AVAIL, we just want to say we're thankful for the friendship with you and the partnership. We hope that to see the God do more great things through your life, in your life, and we're excited about what's to come.
Thanks for having me, Virgil. Thanks for having me, guys. All AVAIL. Love you guys. God bless.
That is so awesome. Hey, everybody. I hope you've been encouraged by this conversation with James Sang Lee. Hey, check him out. You're going to want to check out some of the stuff that he's got online, and you're going to want to lean in. Great expertise from someone who loves the Lord, loves Jesus, and is making a difference wherever God has placed him. Thanks for connecting with us. As always, I'm your host, Virgil Sierra, lead pastor of Vertical Church in South Florida, where we talk about here on AVAIL amazing things that help you make an impact, influence, and lead well. Be encouraged, be blessed, and we'll catch you next time right here on AVAIL. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the AVAIL podcast with our guest, James Sang Lee. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. And make sure to claim your free trial subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. As always, I'm your AVAIL podcast host, Virgil Sierra. Muchas gracias. Thank you for connecting with us to learn the art of leadership here at the AVAIL podcast.